Welcome back, dear friends, to the Crimson Academy's course on the Kitáb-i-Aqdas. In this section, we're going to be exploring the Kitáb-i-Aqdas in relation to the laws and teachings on worship and daily life. One of the commandments of His Holiness Bahá'u'lláh in the Kitáb-i-Aqdas is the establishment of the institution of the house of worship, designated by him Mashal-Askar, which is the dawning place of the mention of God. He has ordained that in every locality an edifice be built with the utmost perfection for the exclusive purpose of worshipping God. In it, only the word of God may be read or chanted in a way that will exhilarate the hearts and uplift the souls. His Holiness Bahá'u'lláh also counsels parents to teach their children the words of God revealed by him so that they may chant them in the houses of worship. There are words of Bahá'u'lláh revealed in the Kitáb-i-Aqdas. Blessed is he who directeth his steps towards the Mashal-Askar at the hour of dawn, communing with him, attuned to his presence and to his remembrance, imploring his forgiveness, and having entered therein, let him sit in silence to hearken unto the verses of God, the Sovereign, the Almighty, the All-Praised. Say, the Mashal-Askar is in truth any house raised in towns or villages for mention of me. Thus hath it been named before his throne. Would that ye know it, and those who chant the verses of the All-Merciful in most melodious tones will attain thereby unto that with which the kingdoms of earth and heaven can never compare, and they will inhale therefrom the fragrance of my realms, which none discerneth in this day, save those who have been granted vision by this sublime beauty. Say, verily the verses of the merciful uplift the stainless hearts unto those realms of the Spirit, which cannot be described in words or expressed in symbols. Blessed are they that hearken. And again, teach your children that which have been sent down from the heaven of majesty and power, that they may recite the tablets of the merciful in the halls of the Mashal-Askars, in most melodious tones. Verily, he who hath been drawn by the magnet of the love of my name, the merciful, will recite the verses of God in such wise as to enrapture the hearts of those who are fast asleep. Well is it with him who hath quaffed the choice wine of immortal life from the utterances of his Lord, the Lord of mercy, through the power of this exalted name, whereby every high and lofty mountain hath been reduced to dust. We note that His Holiness Bahá'u'lláh urges his followers to conduct prayer services in the Mashal-Askar at the hour of dawn, a time which is specially conducive to spiritual upliftment. In the earlier days of the faith, when social circumstances were favorable in Persia and people worked very flexible hours, the believers often gathered in the home of a Baha'i before dawn to pray and to read the writings of Baha'u'lláh. No doubt in the future, when the world order of Baha'u'lláh is fully established and in every city a sufficient number of Baha'i houses of worship erected, a new social pattern will emerge which will regulate man's way of life in such spheres as work, rest, leisure, and service to the cause, enabling him to arise before dawn and engage in praise and glorification of God. And this will result in a balance being created between his spiritual and physical needs. The spiritual activities of future society will mainly circle around the institution of the Mashal-Askar itself, while its humanitarian and administrative activities will be focused upon a cluster of institutions built around it as its dependencies. These, according to Abdul Baha's words, include hospitals, orphanages, schools, universities, hostels, and similar institutions. The teachings of His Holiness Baha'u'lláh always combine the spiritual and human values together, like the balance that exists between the soul and the body. The Baha'i Faith advocates the observance of spiritual and physical laws, which can alone guarantee the well-being of man. The Mashal Asghar and its dependencies provide this balance in the community. One is the center of spiritual forces generated through prayer and thanksgiving to God. The other, the institutions of social service, the focal point of all human endeavor, of love and compassion. The beloved guardian Shughi Effendi, as far back as 1929, explained some of the salient features of the Mashal Asghar in a letter to the American Baha'is, who were then engaged in building the first Baha'i house of worship in the Western world. It should be borne in mind that the central edifice of the Mashal Asghar, round which in the fullness of time shall cluster such institutions of social service as shall afford relief to the suffering, sustenance to the poor, shelter to the wayfarer, solace to the bereaved, and education to the ignorant, should be regarded apart from these dependencies as a house solely designed and entirely dedicated to the worship of God in accordance with the few yet definitely prescribed principles established by Baha'u'lláh in the Kitáb-i-Aqdas. It should not be inferred, however, from this general statement that the interior of the central edifice itself will be converted into a conglomeration of religious services conducted along lines associated with the traditional procedure obtaining in churches, mosques, synagogues, and other temples of worship. Its various avenues of approach, all converging towards the central hall beneath its dome, will not serve as admittance to those sectarian adherents of rigid formulae and man-made creeds, each bent according to his way to observe his rites, recite his prayers, perform his ablutions, and display the particular symbols of his faith within separately defined sections of Baha'u'llah's universal house of worship. Far from the Mashal Asghar offering such a spectacle of incoherent and confused sectarian observances and rites, a condition wholly incompatible with the provisions of the Aqdas and irreconcilable with the spirit it inculcates, the central house of Baha'i worship, enshrined within the Mashal Asghar, will gather within its chastened walls, in a serenely spiritual atmosphere, only those who, discarding forever the trapping of elaborate and ostentatious ceremony, are willing worshippers of the one true God, as manifested in this age in the person of Baha'u'lláh. To them will the Mashal Asghar symbolize the fundamental verity underlying the Baha'i Faith, that religious truth is not absolute but relative, that divine revelation is not final but progressive. Theirs will be the conviction that an all-loving and ever-watchful Father who, in the past and at various stages in the evolution of mankind, has sent forth his prophets as the bearers of his light to mankind, cannot at this critical period of their civilization withhold from his children the guidance which they sorely need amid the darkness which has beset them, and which neither the light of science nor that of human intellect and wisdom can succeed in dissipating. And thus, having recognized in Baha'u'lláh the source whence this celestial light proceeds, they will irresistibly feel attracted to seek the shelter of his house and congregate therein, unhampered by ceremonials and unfettered by creed, to render homage to the one true God, the essence and orb of eternal life, and to exalt and magnify the name of his messengers and prophets, who from time immemorial, even unto our day, have, under diverse circumstances and in varying measure, mirrored forth to a dark and wayward world the light of heavenly guidance. But however inspiring the conception of Baha'i worship, as witnessed in the central edifice of this exalted temple, it cannot be regarded as the sole nor even the essential actor in the part which the Mashal Asghar, as designed by Baha'u'lláh, is destined to play in the organic life of the Baha'i community. Divorced from the social, humanitarian, educational, and scientific pursuits centering around the dependencies of the Mashal Asghar, Baha'i worship, however, exalted in its conception, however passionate in fervor, can never hope to achieve beyond the meager and often transitory results produced by the contemplations of the ascetic or the communion of the passive worshipper. It cannot afford lasting satisfaction and benefit to the worshipper himself, much less to humanity in general, unless and until translated and transfused into that dynamic and disinterested service to the cause of humanity, which it is the supreme privilege of the dependencies of the Mashal Asghar to facilitate and promote. Nor will the exertions, no matter how disinterested and strenuous, of those who, within the precincts of the Mashal Asghar, will be engaged in administering the affairs of the future Baha'i Commonwealth, fructify and prosper unless they are brought into close and daily communion with those spiritual agencies centering in and radiating from the central shrine of the Mashal Asghar. Nothing short of direct and constant interaction between the spiritual forces emanating from the house of worship, centering in the heart of the Mashal Asghar, and the energies consciously displayed by those who administer its affairs in their service to humanity, can possibly provide the necessary agency capable of removing the ills that have so long and so grievously afflicted humanity. For it is assuredly upon the consciousness of the efficacy of the revelation of Baha'u'lláh, reinforced on one hand by the spiritual communion with his spirit, and on the other by the intelligent application and the faithful execution of the principles and laws he revealed, that the salvation of a world in travail must ultimately depend, and of all the institutions that stand associated with his holy name, surely none save the institution of the Mashal Asghar can most adequately provide the essentials of Baha'i worship and service, both so vital to the regeneration of the world. Therein lies the secret of the loftiness of the potency of the unique position of the Mashal Asghar as one of the outstanding institutions conceived by Baha'u'lláh. The Baha'i House of Worship is a nine-sided building, symbolic of the number of Baha. Baha'u'lláh has forbidden the display of pictures or statues within its walls, and since there are no clergy in the faith, there are to be no sermons. Another prohibition is the use of musical instruments. Only the human voice may be used in chanting or reading the word of God, and glorifying his name. Baha'i worship is not limited to a service at the Mash'al Asghar. One of the ordinances of Baha'u'lláh in the Kitáb-i-Aqdas is the daily obligatory prayer. It is enjoined upon every believer from the age of 15 to observe this commandment in the privacy of his own chamber. This is one of the rituals of the faith of Baha'u'lláh. But no individual or institution of the faith has the right to enforce this law. The believer alone is responsible before his God for this act of devotion to him. In saying the daily obligatory prayer, one must perform all its rites, including the turning towards the Qibla of the Baha'i world. His Holiness Baha'u'lláh has revealed 3 obligatory prayers for the individual, and has enjoined on him to recite one of these prayers every day. These are known as the long, the medium, and the short obligatory prayers. In the first 2, Baha'u'lláh has ordained certain genuflectory actions which are designed to heighten man's devotion and servitude to his Creator. In order to appreciate the significance of these actions, let us recall that the human personality of the manifestation of God influences the form of the religion he founds. To cite one example, we know that the Word of God in its innermost reality is exalted above and independent of any language. It emanates from the kingdom of revelation, and as such, it is limitless in its potency and far removed from the material world. However, this spiritual entity is clothed within the mantle of the spoken word, which is limited and belongs to the world of man. This is one way in which the personality of the manifestation of God affects the form of religion. Since His Holiness Baha'u'lláh was a native of Persia, the Word of God has been revealed in the Persian and Arabic languages. Had the person of the manifestation of God been a native of another land, the revealed Word would have assumed a different form altogether. The effect of the personality of the manifestation on his religion is not limited to influencing the Word of God. It affects almost every feature of that religion. The genuflectory actions ordained in the obligatory prayers provide an example. For this important religious rite has been formulated and to some extent influenced by the personality of Baha'u'lláh. These genuflections are intended to convey symbolically man's attitude towards his Lord. The combination of the words uttered with the actions that accompany them will bring about a greater consciousness of the sovereignty of God and of man's impotence and poverty in this life. The form that these actions take, however, is based in Baha'u'llah's own personal background. In the society in which he was brought up, the language was Persian, and there were certain expressions which were conveyed by the movement of one's hands or body, similar to the use of the Persian language in the revelation of the Word of God. His Holiness Baha'u'lláh has incorporated these movements, which were known to him, to express symbolically various feelings such as humility, supplication, and servitude to God. Every culture has its own language and customs. The person of the manifestation of God, from the human point of view, abides within his own environment. He expresses himself like the rest of his countrymen. In the Persian culture, it was customary to raise one's hands toward heaven when supplicating the Lord, or to bend one's body when showing humility, or to prostrate oneself before one's God when expressing one's utter nothingness before Him. These actions His Holiness Baha'u'lláh has incorporated in the obligatory prayers in order to increase the ardor and devotion of the servant when praying to his Lord, and to demonstrate both by words and by action the loftiness, the grandeur, and the glory of God, while recognizing his own station of servitude at his threshold. His Holiness Baha'u'lláh has attached utmost importance to the obligatory prayer. Abdul Baha, in one of his tablets, describes it as the very foundation of the cause of God and the cause of spiritual life for the individual. In another tablet, he states that the observance of the ordinance of obligatory prayer is binding on all, and no excuse is acceptable except when a person is mentally deranged or is confronted by extraordinary circumstances. Apart from the obligatory prayers, which are enjoined on all believers, there are many prayers revealed by the Bab, Baha'u'lláh, and Abdul Baha, which are of a different nature, and the recital of which do not constitute a religious rite. Their recital is voluntary and can be said whenever the individual is moved to do so, either in private or public. In Islam, it is customary to say the obligatory prayer in congregations. His Holiness Baha'u'lláh has forbidden congregational prayers, except for the dead. Unlike the obligatory prayer, which must be said in private, the special obligatory prayer for the dead is to be recited in congregation. Here we notice the difference between ordinary prayers revealed by the Bab, Baha'u'lláh, and Abdul Baha, which may be recited in public, and the obligatory prayer for the dead, which is one of the rites of the Bahá'í Faith, and Baha'u'lláh has permitted its recital in public. The word congregational may cause a misunderstanding, in that one may assume that the whole congregation must join in unison to recite the prayer. But this is not so. The prayer for the dead is to be recited by one person in the presence of the congregation. On the other hand, there are tablets or prayers revealed by Baha'u'lláh or Abdul Baha, which in the original language lend themselves to be chanted in unison. But since these are not part of any rite, their recital in this manner is not termed congregational. Another form of worship, which His Holiness Baha'u'lláh has ordained in the Kitáb-i-Aqdas, is one's work, when carried out in the spirit of service to mankind. This teaching is unique in religious history and is a source of spiritual and material progress. It is enjoined upon every one of you to engage in some form of occupation, such as crafts, trades, and the like. We have graciously exalted your engagement in such work to the rank of worship unto God, the true one. Ponder ye in your hearts the grace and the blessings of God, and render thanks unto him at eventide and at dawn. Waste not your time in idleness and sloth. Occupy yourselves with that which profiteth yourselves and others. Thus hath it been decreed in this tablet, from whose horizon the day star of wisdom and utterance shineth resplendent. The most despised of men in the sight of God are those who sit idly and beg. Hold ye fast unto the cord of material means, placing your whole trust in God, the provider of all means. When anyone occupieth himself in a craft or trade, such occupation itself is regarded in the estimation of God as an act of worship, and this is not but a token of his infinite and all-pervasive bounty. Although the worship of God is the paramount duty of man and the purpose of his life, yet His Holiness Baha'u'lláh states in one of his tablets that should a person be occupied with the worship of God throughout his life, but devoid of pure deeds and deprived of those spiritual qualities which help promote the cause of God, his act of worship is of no benefit to him and will produce no result. Another institution of vital importance, which originated from the Blessed Bab and was confirmed and established by His Holiness Baha'u'lláh in the Kitáb-i-Aqdas, is that of the 19-day feast. Each Baha'i month, the members of the Baha'i community take part in a feast which combines three important features of devotional readings and prayers, of consultation, and of fellowship. His Holiness Baha'u'lláh states that the main purpose of the 19-day feast is to create love and unity in the hearts of people. In the Kitáb-i-Aqdas, His Holiness Baha'u'lláh categorically condemns mendicancy and asceticism. He strongly disapproves the practice of retiring in solitude, of self-mortification, and inflicting hardships upon the body. He affirms that such deeds are not conducive to spiritual gain and have no merit in the sight of God. In several tablets, His Holiness Baha'u'lláh has reiterated this important teaching. In the Kalamata Firdausi, this is the words of paradise, revealed in honor of Haji Mirza Haydar Ali, His Holiness Baha'u'lláh reveals these words. O people of the earth, living in seclusion or practicing asceticism is not acceptable in the presence of God. It behoveth them that are endued with insight and understanding to observe that which will cause joy and radiance. Such practices as are sprung from the loins of idle fancy, or are begotten of the womb of superstition, ill beseem men of knowledge. In former times, and more recently, some people have been taking up their abodes in the caves of the mountains, while others have repaired to graveyards at night. Say, give ear unto the counsels of this wronged one. Abandon the things current amongst you, and adopt that which the faithful counselor biddeth you. Deprive not yourselves of the bounties which have been created for your sake. In the Bisharat, this is the glad tidings, His Holiness Baha'u'lláh directs the Christian monks to come out of their cloisters and live a life of service to mankind. These are his words. The pious deeds of the monks and priests among the followers of the Spirit, upon him be the peace of God, are remembered in his presence. In this day, however, let them give up the life of seclusion and direct their steps towards the open world and busy themselves with that which will profit themselves and others. We have granted them leave to enter into wedlock, that they may bring forth one who will make mention of God, the Lord of the seen and the unseen, the Lord of the exalted throne. His Holiness Baha'u'lláh, in many of his writings, describes the exalted station of man, has exhorted him to loftiness of character and whatever will enhance his honor and dignity. In the Kitáb-i-Aqdas, he has forbidden the practice of the confession of sins, which is conducive to humiliation for the individual. Instead, he has ordained that the sinner should repent to God and seek forgiveness from Him. In one of his tablets, he states, "When the sinner findeth himself wholly detached and freed from all save God, he should beg forgiveness and pardon from Him. Confession of sins and transgressions before human beings is not permissible, as it hath never been nor will ever be conducive to divine forgiveness. Moreover, such confession before people results in one's humiliation and abasement, and God, exalted be His glory, wisheth not the humiliation of His servants. Verily, He is the compassionate, the merciful. The sinner should, between himself and God, implore mercy from the ocean of mercy, beg forgiveness from the heaven of generosity, and say, O God, my God, I implore Thee by the blood of Thy true lovers, who were so enraptured by Thy sweet utterance, that they hastened unto the pinnacle of glory, the sight of the most glorious martyrdom, and I beseech Thee, by the mysteries which lie enshrined in Thy knowledge, and by the pearls that are treasured in the ocean of Thy bounty, to grant forgiveness unto me, and unto my father and my mother, of those who show forth mercy. Thou art in truth the most merciful. No God is there but Thee, the ever forgiving, the all bountiful. O Lord, Thou seest this essence of sinfulness, turning unto the ocean of Thy favor, and this feeble one, seeking the kingdom of Thy divine power, and this poor creature, inclining himself towards the day star of Thy wealth. By Thy mercy and Thy grace, disappoint him not, O Lord, nor debar him from the revelations of Thy bounty in Thy days, nor cast him away from Thy door, which Thou hast opened wide to all that dwell in Thy heaven and on Thine earth. Alas, alas! My sins have prevented me from approaching the court of Thy holiness, and my trespasses have caused me to stray far from the tabernacle of Thy majesty. I have committed that which Thou didst forbid me to do, and have put away what Thou didst ordain me to observe. I pray Thee by Him who is the sovereign Lord of names, to write down for me with the pen of Thy bounty that which will enable me to draw nigh unto Thee, and will purge me from my trespasses, which have intervened between me and Thy forgiveness and Thy pardon. Verily, Thou art the potent, the bountiful. No God is there but Thee, the mighty, the gracious. Another practice denounced by Baha'u'lláh in the Kitáb-i-Aqdas, and one that is repugnant to him, is that of using religion and the worship of God for one's own self-advancement. In the past, countless men have used the cloak of religion in order to gain leadership. Some ambitious people posed as holy men in order to win the respect of the community. In this day, too, there are many who are doing the same. Today, the real meanings of piety and holiness have been lost, and instead, these words have often become the trademark for the hypocrite disguised in the garb of religion, pretending to be a holy man, while his deeds and private life vastly differ from his words. For instance, in Persia, the cradle of the faith of His Holiness Baha'u'lláh, Many people have led to believe that one of the signs of spirituality and holiness is for a religious leader to be muttering the words of the Quran as he walks among the public. Often the clergy are seen in the streets to be moving their lips, pretending to be reciting prayers. His Holiness Baha'u'lláh has forbidden this practice in the Kitáb-i-Aqdas. Another form of hypocrisy current among many people in Persia in the early days of the faith was to force a permanent impression of a small prayer tile on their foreheads in order to advertise their piety to the public. When the ignorant and the fanatic gazed upon one's swollen forehead, they were carried away in adoration of a so called holy man who had spent so much of his time in prayer, prostrating himself so frequently upon the hard prayer tile that a callus had formed on his forehead. Although there must be many religious people who with pure motive live a good life, yet the hypocrisy associated with those who pose as pious and holy is widespread. In his teachings, His Holiness Baha'u'lláh places paramount importance upon purity of motive and sincerity in one's thoughts and actions. In the Kitab-i-Aqdas, His Holiness Baha'u'lláh enumerates some of the virtues that must adorn a human soul. Adorn your heads with the garlands of trustworthiness and fidelity, your hearts with the attire of the fear of God, your tongues with absolute truthfulness, your bodies with the vesture of courtesy. These are, in truth, seemly adornings unto the temple of man, if ye be of them that reflect. Cling, O ye people of Baha, to the cord of servitude unto God, the true one, for thereby your stations shall be made manifest, your names written and preserved, your ranks raised, and your memory exalted in the preserved tablet. Beware lest the dwellers on earth hinder you from this glorious and exalted station. Thus have we exhorted you in most of our epistles, and now in this our holy tablet, above which hath beamed the daystar of the laws of the Lord your God, the powerful, the all-wise. In the hidden words, His Holiness Baha'u'lláh rebukes the ulama in these words: O ye that are foolish, yet have a name to be wise, wherefore do ye wear the guise of shepherds, when inwardly ye have become wolves intent upon my flock? Ye are even as the star which riseth ere the dawn, and which, though it seem radiant and luminous, leadeth the wayfarers of my city astray into the paths of perdition. And again, O ye seeming fair, yet inwardly foul, ye are like clear but bitter water, which to outward seeming is crystal pure, but of which, when tested by the divine assayer, not a drop is accepted. Yea, the sunbeam falls alike upon the dust and the mirror, yet differ they in reflection, even as doth the star from the earth. Nay, immeasurable is the difference. In another passage, His Holiness Baha'u'lláh indicates that in this dispensation nothing but pure deeds will be acceptable to God. O my friends, quench ye the lamp of error, and kindle within your hearts the everlasting torch of divine guidance. For ere long the assayers of mankind shall, in the holy presence of the adored, accept not but purest virtue and deeds of stainless holiness. In the Kitáb-i-Aqdas, His Holiness Baha'u'lláh states that God has created the means for the achievement of everything in this life. He urges the people to use them. For instance, he directs his followers to consult a skilled physician when ill. In this example, medicine is the means by which an ill person may recover from his illness. Similarly, there are means through which man may overcome his poverty, ignorance, or any other problem. Of course, prayer plays an important part in the life of man, but prayer without action has little or no effect at all. The two must go hand in hand. By adhering to the means for achieving a goal, and by drawing on the power of God through prayer, one's efforts will become crowned with success. The sick person should follow the advice of a skilled physician by taking the remedy and at the same time praying for healing. His Holiness Baha'u'lláh has clearly stated that through prayer the sick person may recover from his illness, and has revealed healing prayers. But he has not made the spiritual approach to healing an alternative to a doctor's prescription. In order to emphasize this point, His Holiness Baha'u'lláh, in most cases, ordered his companions to seek the advice of a doctor when they were ill, rather than healing them through his divine powers. He also told them to pray for the sick person, and when the members of his own family were taken ill, he asked for a doctor to come. It must also be pointed out that while Baha'u'lláh emphasizes the importance of prayers for the sick, he does not advocate any other method of spiritual healing, such as those practiced by faith healers or similar practitioners. In answer to a question by an individual, the beloved guardian Shoghi Effendi writes through his secretary, "There is no such thing as Baha'i healers, or a Baha'i type of healing. In his most holy book, the Kitáb-i-Aqdas, His Holiness Baha'u'lláh says to consult the best physicians, in other words, doctors who have studied a scientific system of medicine. He never gave us to believe that he himself would heal us through healers, but rather through prayer and the assistance of medicine and approved treatments." His Holiness Baha'u'lláh teaches that the science of medicine and the art of healing must be developed. Abdul Baha has stated that the science of medicine will be so perfected in the future that most diseases will be treated with foods, herbs, and natural remedies. Although it is not the main mission of Baha'u'lláh to give guidance on matters dealing with food and health, a role which must be played by science in this age, he has nevertheless given some basic advice about diet and hygiene. In it, the tablet known as the Lohit Tib, the tablet of medicine, revealed in honor of Agha Mirza Muhammad Rezai Tabib, a physician from Yazd, His Holiness Baha'u'lláh advocates medical treatment when it is necessary, recommends treating the patient first through diet, and resorting to medicine if the former proves ineffective. In this tablet, he enumerates some of the basic prescriptions for good health and gives some dietary advice. He also stresses the importance of contentment under all circumstances for good health, and asserts that grief and sorrow will cause man the greatest misery, and warns that jealousy will consume the body while anger will burn the liver. In this tablet, His Holiness Baha'u'lláh exhorts the physician to heal the patient by first turning to God and seeking his assistance. his assistance, and then prescribing the remedy. He affirms that a physician who has recognized him and has become filled with his love will exert such an influence that his mere visit will restore health to the patient. Indeed, Agha Mirza Muhammad Reza, for whom this tablet was revealed, lived up to these high ideals. Of him, Haji Muhammad Tahir Malmari writes, one of the early believers who embraced the faith when Sayyid Yahya Darabi, known as Wahid, came to Yazd was Agha Mirza Muhammad Rezai Tabib. He was a skilled and distinguished physician, and an embodiment of grace and steadfastness. The pen of the Most High revealed the Lohit Tib in his honor. In that exalted tablet, Baha'u'lláh states that the mere visit of a physician who has drunk deep of the wine of his love will cure the patient. Mirza Muhammad Reza was truly the fulfillment of these words of Baha'u'lláh. He used to cure the patient by administering very simple remedies. Truly he possessed wonderful qualities which made him a very special person in the community of the Most Great Name. Owing to his intense piety, he became highly disturbed when Mirza Yahya broke the covenant. As a result, he was bewildered and stunned. He even became hesitant in the cause for a short time. Then it was as though divine providence sent Mullah Zainul Abidin, a native of Najafabad. He was entitled by Baha'u'lláh as Zainul Muqarrabin to Yazd in order to calm his agitation and dispel his doubts. Zainul Muqarrabin at first stayed in the house of this servant in the district of Malamir, but when he learned of the intense anguish and distress that Mirza Muhammad Reza was subjected to, he changed his residence and stayed in his home instead. Consequently, Mirza Muhammad Reza became fully aware of the circumstances of the revelation of Baha'u'lláh. He later received many tablets from the pen of the Most High and served the faith of Baha'u'lláh with devotion and love to the end of his life. He was about 80 years old when he passed away. In the Lohit Tib, His Holiness Baha'u'lláh praises the science of medicine as being the most meritorious of all sciences, and states that it is the means which God has created for the well-being of mankind. And it is at the end of this tablet that it reveals one of his most celebrated healing prayers. Thy name is my healing, O my God, and remembrance of thee is my remedy. Nearness to thee is my hope, and love for thee is my companion. Thy mercy to me is my healing and my succor in both this world and the world to come. Thou verily art the all-bountiful, the all-knowing, the all-wise. Also, in this tablet, His Holiness Baha'u'lláh states the importance of courage and steadfastness in his cause, as well as wisdom in teaching. He categorically affirms that if the believers had faithfully carried out his commandments, the majority of the peoples of the world would have embraced his faith in his days. No reference to medicine and its role in healing would be complete without mentioning the power of the Holy Spirit, which is exclusive to the manifestations of God, a power that can heal without any physical means. This is the power that Christ possessed and that Baha'u'lláh manifested fully in this day. There were many occasions when Baha'u'lláh, or Abdul Baha, upon whom the same powers were conferred, brought miraculous healing to a person when doctors had failed. Although Baha'u'lláh has forbidden his followers to attribute miracles to him. Nevertheless, there are many accounts left to posterity by his disciples, describing the circumstances in which he either healed incurables or raised the dead. But none of these supernatural acts were considered by his followers to be a proof of the truth of his cause, as otherwise this would amount to the degradation of his exalted station. His Holiness Abdul Baha also possessed this power. Dr. Yunus Khan, distinguished and trusted secretary of Abdul Baha, and one of the heralds of the covenant of Baha'u'lláh, writes an interesting account in his memoirs. The following is a summary of his reminiscences. I heard Abdul Baha many times speaking about the subject of medicine. He used to say that Janabi Kalim, Baha'u'llah's faithful brother, was very knowledgeable in herbal medicine and used to practice it. In the early days, Abdul Baha also used to prescribe medicine to those who came to him for healing. But later Baha'u'lláh directed him not to prescribe for patients, so that believers might turn to the medical profession and not form the habit of seeking medical advice from unqualified people. This advice was given by Baha'u'lláh so that his injunction in the Kitáb-i-Aqdas to consult a skilled physician might be realized. Although we all knew that because of this particular commandment in the Kitab-i-Aqdas, Abdul Baha, the healer of spiritual ills, would not consent to prescribe for a physical sickness. Yet whenever the doctor's treatment failed to cure, the patient used to turn to the master and beg for healing from the one who was the healer of all ills. And since the compassionate nature of Abdul Baha was such that he could not withhold help from an individual who turned to him, in such cases he would, as a matter of principle, employ some means to cure the patient. This he did by offering some remedy and thus conferring healing on the individual. More surprising is the fact that whereas the believers acted with some restraint, the non-Baha'i public who were not aware of the real situation used to come to him for healing more often, and none of them left feeling disappointed. One of the remedial means which was Abdul Baha's disposal and which he offered to make to many a sick person was a delicious sauce made from pomegranates. The fruit had been grown in the garden of Rezvan in Akka. To whomsoever Abdul Baha gave this sauce, whether a believer or a non-Baha'i, he would say that the pomegranates had grown on trees in the garden of Rezvan, trees which had been blessed by Baha'u'llah's eyes. But what were the circumstances which produced healing? Was it an inherent nature of the patient to be cured? Was the cure the result of taking the sauce? Or was it purely through the will of Abdul Baha? I do not know the answer, but one thing I know that it was proved time and time again that this delicious fruit sauce was the remedy for many an illness. This was one of the topics often discussed among the believers in the pilgrim house. Another prescription which Abdul Baha gave to some was that of fasting, or cutting down on certain foods. But there was another method which Abdul Baha, the healer of man's spiritual ills, would use, and that was healing without any means. Once I was cured by him without any material means, and this is the story. During the time that Dr. Aristu Khan was in Akka and staying in the pilgrim house, I became ill. Although this illness lasted for a long time and the pain was intolerable, I did not ask Abdul Baha for a cure. Instead, Dr. Aristu Khan treated me and used all the tricks he knew, but I was no better. One night I experienced an excruciating pain, which was beyond endurance. All the pilgrims who heard my groaning became so weary that although it was 2 hours after midnight, we all agreed to dispatch Agha Muhammad Hassan, the caretaker of the pilgrim house, to the house of the Master and beg for healing. This was done. I do not know whether his blessed person was asleep or awake at the time. The only thing I know is that when Agha Muhammad Hassan had returned, I was in a deep sleep. When I woke up in the afternoon, there was no pain, and in the evening I felt able to walk. For about 25 days I had been ill, and the last few days confined to bed. During this period I had been deprived of attaining the presence of the Master, so I walked slowly towards his house. I met him on the road where I attained his presence. He asked about my health and showered his bounties and grace upon me. I felt it was an opportune moment to beg him to grant me complete recovery. This I did. He said, "Very well, but you ought to have a blood-letting operation, either by using a cupping glass or by phlebotomy." The word cupping glass frightened me, and like a spoiled child, I pulled up my shoulders and screwed up my face, meaning that I could not bear a knife or a cupping glass. Seeing me in this mode, he said in an amused voice, "Good gracious, man, I want to send you to face the swords of the enemies, and you are afraid of a cupping glass?" Being outspoken and known for my blabbing habits, I ventured to say jokingly, "When that happens, God will show his benevolence to me. But if I wanted to use the cupping glass as a means of recovering, why would I come to your presence and beg for healing from you?" He smiled, and that was the final remedy for me. I was healed without any material means. One of His Holiness Baha'u'llah's injunctions in the Kitáb-i-Aqdas is immaculate cleanliness. He calls on his followers to become the embodiment of purity among the peoples of the world. Although this commandment of Baha'u'lláh relates to physical cleanliness and therefore is conducive to man's dignity and distinction, it exerts an appreciable influence on his spiritual state, for outward cleanliness is a sign of spiritual purity and liveliness. In every stage of his life, whether in prison or in freedom, Abdul Baha, the exemplar of the teachings of Baha'u'lláh, lived up to this important teaching. One of his striking features, to which friends and foes have paid glowing tribute, was his spotless cleanliness and his outward appearance. In his writings, His Holiness Baha'u'lláh has enjoined upon his followers spotless chastity for both men and women. In the Kitab-i-Aqdas, he reiterates this important moral issue. At a time when the forces of irreligion are sweeping across the world and standards of morality are declining, the teachings of His Holiness Baha'u'lláh on chastity shine as a light in darkness. The exhortations in which the following passages gleaned from one of his tablets demonstrate the highest standard of morality which he inculcates in his followers. Say, he is not to be numbered with the people of Baha who followeth his mundane desires, or fixeth his heart on things of the earth. He is my true follower who, if he come to a valley of pure gold, will pass straight through it, aloof as a cloud, and will neither turn back nor pause. Such is a man assuredly of me. From his garment the concourse on high can inhale the fragrance of sanctity, and if he met the fairest and most comely of women, he would not feel his heart seduced by the least shadow of desire for her beauty. Such an one indeed is the creation of spotless chastity. Thus instructive you the pen of the Ancient of Days, as bidden by your Lord, the Almighty, the All-Bountiful. Having surveyed the writings of His Holiness Baha'u'lláh, the beloved guardian Shoghi Effendi has summarized some of Baha'u'llah's teachings on this subject. These are his conclusions. A chaste and holy life must be made the controlling principle in the behavior and conduct of all Baha'is, both in their social relations with the members of their own community and in their contact with the world at large. It must adorn and reinforce the ceaseless labors and meritorious exertions of those whose enviable position is to propagate the message and to administer the affairs of the faith of Baha'u'lláh. It must be upheld in all its integrity and implications in every phase of the life of those who fill the ranks of that faith, whether in their homes, their travels, their clubs, their societies, their entertainments, their schools, and their universities. It must be accorded special consideration in the conduct of the social activities of every Baha'i summer school and any other occasions on which Baha'i community life organized and fostered. It must be closely and continually identified with the mission of the Baha'i youth, both as an element in the life of the Baha'i community and as a factor in the future progress and orientation of the youth of their own country. Such a chaste and holy life, with its implications of modesty, purity, temperance, decency, and clean mindedness, involves no less than the exercise of moderation in all that pertains to dress, language, amusements, and all artistic and literary avocations. It demands daily vigilance in the control of one's carnal desires and corrupt inclinations. It calls for the abandonment of a frivolous conduct with its excessive attachment to trivial and often misdirected pleasures. It requires total abstinence from all alcoholic drinks, from opium, and from similar habit forming drugs. It condemns the prostitution of art and of literature, the practices of nudism and of companionate marriage, infidelity in marital relationships, and all manner of promiscuity, of easy familiarity, and of sexual vices. He can tolerate no compromise with the theories, the standards, the habits, and the excesses of a decadent age. Nay, rather, it seeks to demonstrate, through the dynamic force of its example, the pernicious character of such theories, the falsity of such standards, the hollowness of such claims, the perversity of such habits, and the sacrilegious character of such excesses. Holiness Baha'u'lláh has encouraged the people to enter into matrimony and has affirmed it to be a cause of well-being and unity among the children of men. In the Kitáb-i-Aqdas, His Holiness Baha'u'lláh states, "Enter into wedlock, O people, that ye may bring forth one who will make mention of me." As indicated in this passage, the main purpose of marriage, according to Baha'i teachings, is procreation, to promote unity and avoid disagreement between families. Baha'u'lláh has ordained that after the consent of both parties, which is an essential element in marriage, the couple must obtain the consent of their natural parents as well. Without the latter, a Baha'i marriage cannot take place. The Baha'i marriage ceremony is a very simple and moving experience. At present, it is conducted under the auspices of spiritual assemblies. Baha'i teachings emphasize that a true marriage is one that creates a union between man and wife on both the physical and the spiritual levels. Such a marriage becomes an eternal partnership and brings happiness and joy to the hearts. His Holiness Abdul Baha, in one of his tablets, writes, "Marriage among the mass of the people is a physical bond, and this union can only be temporary, since it is foredoomed to a physical separation at the close. Among the people of Baha, however, marriage must be a union of the body and of the spirit as well, for here both husband and wife are aglow with the same wine, both are enamored of the same matchless faith, both live and move through the same spirit, both are illumined by the same glory. This connection between them is a spiritual one, hence it is a bond that will abide forever. Likewise, do they enjoy strong and lasting ties in the physical world as well, for if the marriage is based both on the spirit and the body, that union is a true one, hence it will endure. If, however, the bond is physical and nothing more, it is sure to be only temporary, and must inexorably end in separation. When therefore the people of Baha undertake to marry, the union must be a true relationship, a spiritual coming together as well as a physical one, so that throughout every phase of life and in all the worlds of God, their union will endure, for this real oneness is gleaming out of the love of God. And again, Baha'i marriage is the commitment of the two parties one to the other, and their mutual attachment of mind and heart. Each must, however, exercise the utmost care to become thoroughly acquainted with the character of the other, that the binding covenant between them may be a tie that will endure forever. Their purpose must be this: to become loving companions and comrades, and at one with each other for time and eternity. The true marriage of Baha'is is this: that the husband and wife should be united both physically and spiritually, that they may ever improve the spiritual life of each other and may enjoy everlasting unity throughout all the worlds of God. This is Baha'i marriage. In Islamic communities, music had been condemned by the clergy because they considered it to be conducive to pleasure and leading man to lust. In Persia, during the early days of the faith, musicians were denounced by religious leaders as agents of Satan. The stigma attached to music was so distasteful that musicians had to hide their instruments in public. At weddings, for instance, people had to observe some religious rites in the presence of the clergy. But it was a well-known secret that the musicians were waiting in another room, and when the mullah's performance was finished and he had left, they came out to play their instruments and may make merry. The following story serves to illustrate the severity with which the clergy dealt with anyone who indulged in this art. In the bazaars in Persia, there are shops selling kebab. The meat was placed on a wooden board and had to be chopped and then minced with a very large and heavy chopping knife, which usually had to be held by its two ends. When the chopping knife hit the meat on the board, it made a loud noise. In a busy shop, at least, one man would be engaged from morning till night doing his work. There was a man in this city of Yazd who was working in this capacity in such a shop. But he was a merry man at heart and loved music. So as he hit the board, he cleverly used to produce a rhythm. Though not more than a mere thumping sound, it was attractive to the ear. This combined with the rhythmic movement of his body made an interesting spectacle for the passer-by. For some time there was controversy over this man and his way of mincing the meat. Eventually one of the mujtahids of Yazd decided to put an end to this sacrilegious act. The poor man was summoned and warned that he would be severely punished if he continued his practice. Within such a society, His Holiness Baha'u'lláh declares in the Kitáb-i-Aqdas that music is a means by which the spirit of man may experience upliftment and joy. These are his words in that book. We have permitted you to listen to music and singing. Beware lest such listening cause you to transgress the bounds of decency and dignity. Rejoice in the joy of my most great name, through which the hearts are enchanted and the minds of the well-favored are attracted. We have made music a ladder by which souls may ascend to the realm on high. Change it not into wings for self and passion. I seek refuge in God that you be not of the ignorant. His Holiness Abdul Baha too has praised music and singing in several tablets. In one of these he writes, "This wonderful age has rent asunder the veils of superstition and has condemned the prejudice of the people of the East. Among some of the nations of the Orient, music and harmony was not approved of, but the manifested light Baha'u'lláh in this glorious period has revealed in holy tablets that singing and music are the spiritual food of the hearts and souls. In this dispensation, music is one of the arts that is highly approved and is considered to be the cause of the exaltation of sad and desponding hearts. Therefore, set to music the verses and the divine words, so that they may be sung with soul-stirring melody in the assemblies and gatherings, and that the hearts of the listeners may become tumultuous and rise towards the kingdom of Abha in supplication and prayer." In the Kitab-i-Aqdas, His Holiness Baha'u'lláh censures in very strong terms all acts of strife, contention, and violence. He absolutely forbids his followers to engage in anything from which the odor of mischief and sedition can be detected. He counsels them never to sow the seeds of dissension or to foment discord among men. His Holiness Baha'u'llah's commandments in this respect are uncompromising. He categorically states that any mischief maker or stirrer up of sedition is not of him and cannot claim allegiance to his cause. His Holiness Baha'u'lláh enjoins love and unity towards the peoples of the world, regardless of their background. In the Kitab-i-Aqdas, he reveals these words: "Consort with all religions with amity and concord, that they may inhale from you the sweet fragrance of God. Beware lest amidst men the flame of foolish ignorance overpower you. All things proceed from God, and unto him they return. He is the source of all things, and in him all things are ended. And in the same book, His Holiness Baha'u'lláh warns his followers not to show pride or haughtiness to anyone, and reminds them that all humanity has come into being from the same substance, and that all shall return to dust. He urges them, therefore, not to prefer themselves to their neighbors, nor to wish for others what they do not wish for themselves. One of His Holiness Baha'u'llah's prohibitions in the Kitáb-i-Aqdas is slave trading. For thousands of years, people took slaves, and with the coming of Baha'u'lláh, however, God released in the world the forces of unity and proclaimed the equality of human rights. These have now become the spirit of the age, and humanity has come a long way during the last 100 years, abandoning the age-long practice of slavery. In forbidding slavery, Baha'u'lláh in the Kitab-i-Aqdas simply states that it is not proper for a man to buy another man, for all are the servants of the one true God and are equal in his sight. In the hidden words, His Holiness Baha'u'lláh admonishes the peoples of the world. O children of men, know ye not why we created you all from the same dust, that no one should exalt himself over the other? Ponder at all times in your hearts how ye were created. Since we have created you all from one same substance, it is incumbent on you to be even as one soul, to walk with the same feet, eat with the same mouth, and dwell in the same land, that from your inmost being, by your deeds and actions, the signs of oneness and the essence of detachment may be made manifest. Such is my counsel to you, O concourse of light. Heed ye this counsel, that ye may obtain the fruit of holiness from the tree of wondrous glory. And again, O brethren, be forbearing one with another, and set not your affection on things below. Pride not yourselves in your glory, and be not ashamed of abasement. By my beauty, I have created all things from dust, and dust will I return them again. Thank you, dear friends.